Great. All right, you guys. I'm really excited to introduce our first guest speaker of, I guess, the entire class. Is somebody that I look up to and have been mentored by for a very long period of time. It's actually really weird because I met her in a class in California. She was my, I guess, professor. I guess.
Workshop instructor.
Yeah. She taught a class on data and data visualization. I have told you a little bit about her, but I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we will dive right into it. This is going to be a conversation between me and her. I'm going to ask her some questions that I do know the answers to, and then some of them I don't know the answers to. I'll be learning at the same time as you all are. But yeah, Tasneem, why don't you tell them a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Tasneem Raja. I am the senior digital editor at CodeSwitch, which is at NPR, and is a team dedicated to covering stories about race, ethnicity, and culture. And that team's been around for about 3.5 years, and I've been there for almost 2. It's been, as you can imagine, a really amazing time to be on this beat because of everything that's going on in the country with the election, with more attention paid to issues of our sort of shifting demographics, race and policing, diversity in all sorts of industries. So it's been it's like we are not hurting for news. We do not have a slow news day. Before that, I was an editor at Mother Jones magazine. I'm curious, how many of you are familiar with Mother Jones? Okay.
Wow.
So you might. So are you familiar with like the 47% storyline during the Mitt Romney election?
Yeah.
Okay, so we broke that story. Mother Jones has been around for a long time, since the 70s. It's an investigative news focused journalism outlet that's primarily a magazine, but is increasingly online. I think that they're doing some of the best journalism in the country. You may have heard that the federal government, as of this week, is going to stop using private prisons, and that decision comes straight out of an undercover investigation that we were doing at Mother Jones, where we sent one of our reporters to go and work at a private prison and report on what he saw. It was probably their biggest piece ever, and I'm just incredibly proud to be associated with that shop. I was primarily doing, as John said, data visualization stuff at Mother Jones. We also created the first ever database of mass shootings in America. Nobody had ever really put all of that information together in one place. So when John and I met, I was kind of more in the data journalism, investigative reporting through numbers world. Now I've shifted over to more traditional story editing on the race beat. And before all of that, I was a reporter. I was a full-time sort of feature reporter in Chicago at a really great all-weekly out there. So I've had the good fortune to get to do a lot of different kinds of things in journalism and to be at really different newsrooms, from the super tiny, scrappy to the big, relatively well-funded NPR. So yeah, it's been a real education.
All right, great. If you're ever on CodeSwitch, a lot of that work is really great. A lot of it's really insightful, and Tasneem's a big reason for that. So I'm really excited to talk to her in front of you all today. So I guess, Tasneem, my first question is, I've done it, you've done it, other people we know have done it, but you and other people on the team, it's your job to, pretty much cover one topic, right, for a long period of time, right? So if you could just speak to that a little bit, like what's your process for focusing on one area, I guess permanently? or for the duration of your day.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in some ways it feels like I'm back to a single beat. At Mother Jones, I was more of a generalist. When I first started out, I was sort of on the metro beat, so it feels like I'm return. In some way, it felt like I was going to be getting back to a single issue kind of rhythm. But what I have found is, I mean, this beat is really like 1,000 beats. If we wanted to, for instance, just focus for a whole year on diversity in Hollywood and Oscars So White and all of that stuff, we could absolutely do it. If we wanted to spend the whole year focusing on, Black Lives Matter movement and everything around race and policing, we could go hard on that. If we wanted to do something totally different, I mean, Native American issues, shifting demographics, Latinos, the election, it's like we are definitely letting stories go by all the time that we think are really, really important. So it feels like you actually do have to be really diverse in your news consumption, and like your media diet. We try really hard to be paying attention to news that's coming out of the sort of mainstream. So we try really hard to pay attention to local blogs, non-professional writers, citizen journalists, folks who do most of their writing on places like Twitter or Medium, who are going to be surfacing stories and perspectives that are going to be different from those of us on the team, even though the team is by far the most diverse I've ever worked on. We're 9 journalists. We're all people of color. That's, I think we would definitely like a non-person of color, a white person on the team as well. I think that would be really great for us. Right now, we are 9 journalists of color. We are Black, South Asian, East Asian, Latino, mixed. One woman is Iranian American and Latino. So it's a pretty amazing demographic, diversity. Certainly not all perspectives, though. But we live only in DC and LA, and we all, at this point in our lives, make like a livable income. So we try to remind ourselves that, sure, we have a lot of lived experiences of our own to draw from, and yes, we do travel in, maybe a more diverse set of communities than a lot of our colleagues may here at NPR. We're still coming from a pretty narrow perspective.
Yeah.
So a big part of our job to, really stay on these beats, but not do it from a way that feels like people who are sitting in an office in DC are talking about the rest of America, is to be very deeply in these conversations. Twitter is really, like, I would say, our primary place where we are engaging with our communities and our audience. And then the podcast has been a way to, so we launched a podcast, which
and it's awesome. It's amazing. Everybody here should listen to it. It's so great.
I love it. I'm super excited. We're on episode 15. It's like brand new. And the podcast has been a way to bring a more conversational tone to the kind of journalism that we're doing. So it gives us a chance to be in this beat, but also talk about it more just like people, normal people. So I don't know if that really answers your question.
No, it does. And I love that you said, because I've actually never heard you say this before, and it makes all the sense in the world, though, right? Is that you all still cover, you all are still you all aren't representative of everything, you know what I'm saying, that's going on in the stuff you cover, and it also goes into another question I had is since the stuff you cover isn't all based on your experience, right? I'm sure some of it is, but since the stuff you cover isn't all based on your experiences, how do you really get immersed in in a specific topic, or just, I guess, the race beat in general? Like, are you reading 24/7? Are you looking at crazy data sets 24/7? What are you doing?
Yeah, I mean, our own sort of curiosities, I would say, are our best tool. That's like sort of your best resource. I always say to journalists, like especially young folks that I'm working with, I always say notice what you notice. So if there's something that you see happening out there in the world, and you're just like, what's up with X? Like, follow that. Like, follow that instinct, even if it doesn't seem like it's going to be the next Pulitzer Prize winning expose on whatever. Just notice what you notice. So one of my favorite things I've worked on recently was a podcast episode that I actually did the reporting for, and it was on what it's like to have a name that people constantly mispronounce. So like my name, Tasneem Raja, people are constantly mispronouncing. Like I get Jasmine, Janine, Jasmine, like all sorts of stuff. And it's something that I've always talked about with my friends, with my brothers. I've joked around about it. I've silently seethed as a person who I had corrected 5 or 6 times, continued to say it wrong. And it just suddenly hit me like, oh, duh, that's a code switch story. Like, obviously, that is something that our audience is going to want to talk about. And so I got a couple comedians. I got Maz Jobrani, who's a really awesome Iranian-American comedian, and Aparna Nancherla, who's kind of an up-and-coming, younger, fresh voice Indian-American woman. She's written for, I think, like I think she had something to do with Broad City. I mean, she's totally killing it. And
Great job.
Awesome. So anyway, I reached out to them, and I was like, hey, you guys have quote-unquote difficult names. This is a really cross-cultural conversation, and can we just talk about it? And so, we talked about it from all sorts of angles, and it was our most popular podcast episode in terms of like first day downloads, because it's something that a lot of people just are curious about, or want a chance to kind of overhear conversations about, or whatever it might be. So that's like kind of a lighter example of a way that sort of notice what you notice led us to to a good story. We are, of course, like we are following the news very closely. If something is going off in places like Ferguson or St. Louis or wherever it is, of course we're going to ask ourselves like, okay, what's the code angle here? But what I always say is like, we're not a day one news team. We are like day 3, day 4. We're not going to be telling you like, okay, here's what's happening right now. We're going to be telling you more of like, here is the secret history of this thing that everybody's talking about right now, or everybody's talking about this thing in terms of XYZ. We're here to tell you that like ABC is actually really important too, or linking a news event with other things that have been happening in the country in the last few years. So we're really there to layer the context and the background onto the news, as opposed to like just sort of following the news and telling you the who, what, when. We're more the why.
Yeah, and I think one thing that I just talked to them about was a lot of places, a lot of news sites, and just a lot of just media companies are doing that, right? I think they're realizing that that on the internet, since people can have more, that they want more, and I think that they're trying to give them more. But I guess my next question is, I think what I always think, right, is like there's like the NPR audience, and then there's like the Code Switch audience, right? Like I feel like the NPR audience is like my dad, who's a college professor, and like all of his college professor friends around a radio with a dial, and like listening to stuff and talking about it, right? And then like there's the Code Switch audience, who's like me and my brother and like you know a bunch of my friends, like you know, communicating how we communicate. So I guess my question is, you know, because you all are digital and, you know, and a radio beat, you know, you all do both. Is it ever hard to, you know, bring the two together?
Yeah, it is. That sort of question of like, where does Code Switch fit into like the NPR ecosystem is kind of an ongoing, evolving question. We have done some audience research, and we found that the crossover is higher than I would have expected. Like,
Interesting. Okay.
more of our digital audience is tuning in to All Things Considered and Morning Edition, the big news magazines, than I would have guessed. But you know, our audience is unsurprisingly younger, browner, way more female, and that was really interesting to me.
Interesting.
Our audience at Code Switch over indexes in terms of female, female audience members, and the NPR audience tends to, you know, a greater percentage is male than, you know, the average U.S. population, which I thought was fascinating.
Really interesting.
I don't really know what to make of that yet, but I mean, our thing is basically just like we are the audience, you know.
Yeah.
Like, I just kind of feel like that should be true to some extent, no matter where you are, no matter where you're a reporter or an editor or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not into the stuff you're putting out there, if you wouldn't want to read it and you wouldn't want to listen to it, then what's the point, you know? So we just kind of try to like keep going in terms of creating stories and finding, you know, questions to answer that we genuinely find interesting. The podcast has been a place where we can kind of bring it all together. So it's feeling a little bit less like we're digital and then radio. The podcast is where like the whole team works on one thing together, and it's just, so far we've been free to be like pretty voicey and a little more like out there and a little bit more direct, let's just say, than you know, a segment you might hear on All Things Considered. So, you know, we're having fun with it.
So you talked earlier about, like, you know, how you all engage with, you know, your readers and, you know, now your listeners on Twitter and other social platforms. And you can just talk again about, you know, how you involve them in the process of building stuff for your vertical. So, because I think what's really interesting about Code Switch is that it's not just this house of really great and smart stuff. It's also like a community where people are talking to each other about the stuff that they're reading, which is like, you know, which it's super rare for that kind of thing to be like really successful right now. So yeah, if you could just talk a little bit about like how you like manage that whole thing, because like sometimes like I go on your Twitter account or I see people like talking about Code Switch stuff, and it's like it's numerous things that you all have done like at once, and I'm like, who in the hell is looking at all this? Like, how are they? How do they know what's going on?
I don't know. Yeah, we have like 10 like super fans.
Yeah.
Like tweeting every single thing multiple times a day.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll give you a couple examples of audience engagement things that we've done. One is I'll go back to that episode I was just telling you about you know, hard to pronounce names. And what we did was we put a call out on Twitter like 3 weeks before we were going to air the episode. And we said, here's a Google voicemail number. If you have a story about your, you know, mispronouncing someone's name, having a name that's always mispronounced, like whatever, we just want to hear from you. We got 550 voicemails.
Woo! It's crazy.
It's totally nuts. 550 people. And some of these are like long and like really detailed. We asked people to leave the initial question was, I wanted people to leave the way they say their name, the way their parents say their name, and then all of the different, you know, some of the different mispronunciations that they get.
Smart.
And what we ended up doing then in the episode was we went through and we picked out a handful that again, like a really diverse group of folks, a really diverse set of experiences that they were talking about. And we played them in the episode. So I had my comedians, I had Maz and Aparna, we all listened to the voicemails, and then we would talk about them. We just kind of wove it into the episode. And people really liked that. They really liked that we had given them a chance to be part of the story. And, we said, hey, we might use your stuff on the air or online or whatever. We won't get to use it all, but, we'll listen to everything. We did listen to all of them. And it was really cool because afterwards, after the episode went up, I guess some of the people whose voicemails we had used are kind of like, people with like significant Twitter followings of their own. And so all of a sudden people were like, wait, is that blah, blah, blah? And so they all just started talking amongst themselves. And like the 4 people whose voicemails we had put in, they didn't know each other before, but then they start talking to each other on Twitter. So it's just like, this is way too meta for me.
Yeah.
Another example, this is one of my favorites, is this happened very soon after I started. This was about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. Somebody had written a really awesome essay on transom.org, which was then republished in BuzzFeed, about the whiteness of the public radio voice, sort of like that NPR voice, right, that we all have in our heads, and we can all kind of like do it. And reporters who really don't sound like that in real life, they adopt it too. And our hosts, like, I didn't know that Audie Cornish was a Black woman until I started working at NPR, and I think that's true for a lot of people. So there's this sort of like flat, vaguely like New Englandy affect that everybody puts on, and to a lot of people, it doesn't sound like you would. It doesn't sound natural, and it doesn't sound natural to a lot of different kinds of people. So this guy was talking about it, and we were like, this is awesome, and we should be talking about it. So we set up a Twitter chat, and we did hashtag pub radio voice, like public radio voice. And we did a blog post the day before. We were like, hey, we're going to be talking about this. Audie Cornish is going to be there. We had like Sam Sanders, who's one of our politics reporters, Al Letson, like a bunch of people in the sort of public radio family, Lakshmi Singh, and we said, they're going to be in here. We just want to talk about this, and it was nuts. 1 million people used the hashtag.
It's crazy.
In the first 2 days.
Yeah.
We had set up the hashtag conversation to be like a Twitter chat to be for like a couple hours. We said, well, we're going to be talking about this from like 6 p.m. Eastern to like 8 p.m. Eastern. Come join us. People started talking about it at like noon.
Yeah, I remember.
Hashtag at like noon. So that was really weird. And then they kept, so we had a really great conversation. It was awesome. I had so much fun. It was fascinating. And then we were like, all right, cool. Thanks, everybody. This was great. And they didn't care.
That it didn't stop. Yeah.
Going. Like hundreds and hundreds of people just kept the conversation going using that hashtag for like a week.
Yeah.
And what I realized was like, yeah, it was really cool that we like invited all of these folks in, and we kind of had this like pre-written list of questions or whatever. But really what we did was we just created a space for people to use the way they wanted to use it. And we in the end became sort of incidental. Like we were just the host, and they were the real party.
Okay, very cool, very cool. Just a few more questions, and then I'm gonna let you go. I know you're super busy. But you talked earlier. What am I trying to say here? Oh, you talked earlier about how you all have like a bunch of different things like within your beat, and like everything's important, right? Like everything is, is even timely, right? But you all are only, 9 people, which is a lot, but you all, like, nobody can do everything, right? So like, how do you all, and I know you talked about this earlier, but if you could just maybe, say it again, but like, 'cause I think this is important. How do you all decide, what to do in a sea of like so many interesting things? Like, how do you all say, okay, this week we're going to write about X, Y, and Z, even though all these other things are happening too?
Yeah, I mean, our story meetings are unlike any story meeting I've ever been in, where it's just like, yeah, we're basically just kind of like cycling through, like, okay, this happened, this happened, this happened, but we don't stop at just like, okay, do people need to know about this? It's, do we have something to say
Yeah.
about this? So I'm trying to think of an example. So are you guys following the Leslie Jones story, the Ghostbusters actress? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if you're not, you should look it up. It's a crazy story. But, Leslie Jones, I love that movie, the new Ghostbusters. I just thought it was awesome and hilarious, and she was great in it. And people were already upset that, God forbid, women were invading Ghostbusters. And, of course, a black woman was now playing one of the roles. Oh, my God. And people freaked out, and there's been an absolutely awful, atrocious,
Yeah.
just violent, unbelievable campaign against her, and it's only gotten uglier and uglier. And we talked about that today in our meeting, and it was like I guess one of our sort of tests is like, all right, we don't just do outrage of the day, right? If
Yeah.
we're trying to do this outrage of the day on our beat, like that's it, like that's all we would be doing. Right? Is like this messed up thing happened, and then this messed up thing happened. So we can't do that. So we were like, okay, Leslie Jones, like, what do we have? Do we have something to say on this? And we didn't, other than this is messed up. A lot of people are already out there saying this is messed up. The one sort of angle that I was interested in is like, are her cast, her fellow cast members, are they really like kind of coming out to support her? Is there a story there? And just like, she's out there alone. Is she getting support from, the other folks who are like working on these projects with her? Are other SNL people coming out? But it turned out, yeah, some of them had. Nobody was like really full-throated, like there by her side. But they had come out. They said some good stuff on Twitter. So it's like not enough to really be like, check out what Kristen Wiig is saying about all of this, but not nothing either. So that we could be like, hey, it's weird that nobody's really stepping up here. There just wasn't a piece of it that we felt like there's something we want to say beyond this is happening. So a lot of times what we'll do instead is what I call like reaction roundups. And these will be on the blog. I'll have somebody just like look around and see what smart things other people are saying. Like, did somebody write a really good essay at The Atlantic or Slate or, Vox or whatever? And then we'll kind of like go through various angles of a story based on essays, tapes, whatever that other people have written. And we'll like pull out, an interesting nugget from like 5 or 6 of these. And instead what we're doing for our readers is just giving you a guide to the conversation and what's out there, because we don't have anything that we feel like we gotta get our 2 cents there, but there's a lot of really good work and smart, thoughtful insights onto this topic. So sometimes we're curators more than the original deliverer.
Okay, very cool, very cool. So that's all the questions that I have. I don't want to,
Do you guys have any questions?
Yeah.
I'd love to take some if you have any.
Nobody? I guess we covered everything. I guess
we solved journalism.
Yes, we solved the big issue of the day. But yes, everybody give Tasneem a hand. Thank you so much for coming in.
Good luck, guys.
I know you're really busy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
See you later.
All right, have a good one.